Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Monday, February 9, 2026. Today, we're looking at a stack of documents that, well, it represents a kind of paradox. Usually, when we talk history, we're looking backwards, right?
hmm Dusty archives, old photos.
Exactly. Things that are settled and done. But today, we are looking at history in the making. We're talking about a massive shift in urban living that kicks off, well, literally this year.
That's right. And it's happening in a place that, for a lot of people, might just feel like a backdrop to their weekly errands. We are talking about East Montreal, specifically Place Versailles.
Place Versailles. Okay, so for anyone listening who hasn't been to East Montreal, or really anyone who grew up in North America in the last 50 years, you know this type of
Oh, you
place.
definitely do.
It is the classic indoor shopping mall. You've got the fountains, the food court, and the defining feature, that endless sea of asphalt parking all around it.
It's the quintessential mid-century retail model. It really is.
But the plans we have in front of us today, this isn't just a renovation. We are not talking about a new coat of paint and a better food court.
Not at all.
The sources are calling this a historic metamorphosis. And, usually I'm skeptical of that kind of marketing language, but looking at the numbers here, a $2.2 billion project, a timeline that spans a quarter of a century.
It is a staggering scale.
Yeah.
And I think the word historic is actually justified here, not just as, marketing fluff. You have to understand the context. Place Versailles, when it opened up in 1963, it was the first indoor shopping mall on the entire island of Montreal.
The very first one.
Wow. It set the template for retail for half a century. It literally defined how people interacted with the suburbs.
And now, starting in 2026, they're effectively tearing up that template to write a new one. But let's pause on that timeline for a second. 2026 to 2051. That is 25 years.
It is a long time.
I mean, let's be real. That sounds exhausting. If I'm a neighbor or even just a shopper, I'm hearing 25 years of construction noise. I'm hearing dust, detours, headaches. Why so long? Why not just rip the Band-Aid off?
Well, it really comes down to the sheer complexity of the whole operation. This isn't a flip.
Right.
This is not a developer coming in, knocking down a warehouse, building a condo tower, and leaving in 18 months.
Yeah.
This is city building. They are taking a relic of the mid-20th century, which was built exclusively for the car, and transitioning it into a model for 2050, which is, built for the climate and the community.
And they have to do that without killing the patient on the table, so to speak.
The patient being the current mall.
Exactly.
It's like open heart surgery. You can't just shut down the economy of East Montreal for 5 years when you rebuild. So our mission today is to unpack this file. We need to figure out how you take a 17-hectare heat island and turn it into a mixed-use mini-city, all while keeping the lights on.
Okay, let's dive into part one then, the scale and the strategy. Because when I saw the phasing plan, that's where it started to make sense why this takes so long. They aren't just bulldozing the mall tomorrow.
No, and that's the phasing strategy detailed right in the source material. It's a progressive conversion. The developer and the city of Montreal, they realized that a sudden demolition would be catastrophic for the local businesses. The plan explicitly states that nearly 48,000 square meters of commercial space are being retained.
So the mall stays.
Parts of it, yes.
Yeah.
It's being integrated. They're keeping space for retail, for offices, and even a new hotel. But the key is where they are starting now, in 2026. They aren't touching the main building yet.
Right.
They are breaking ground in the northeast sector.
Which, looking at the satellite maps in our notes, is currently just parking.
It's a massive surface parking lot.
Yeah.
That is the low-hanging fruit of urban redevelopment. You build on the empty periphery first.
And that lets you create new value, new housing, new offices, without disrupting the existing flow of the mall too drastically. It's interesting you mention offices, because when we hear mall redevelopment, we usually just assume it means apartments. But the sources highlight a permanent pool of local workers.
And this is a crucial distinction. They were trying to solve the bedroom community problem.
Yeah.
For decades, areas like this were just places you slept. You drove downtown to work, you drove back to sleep.
Right, the suburbs are ghost towns at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday.
Exactly. That creates traffic, pollution, and just a lack of local vibrancy during the day. By integrating significant office space, they are trying to create an ecosystem where you might actually live and work in the same quadrant.
It flips the script on the commute.
It does.
So if they are building on the parking lot and they are keeping the mall open, where do the cars go? And more importantly, what happens to that sea of asphalt we talked about?
And this brings us to the physical environment itself, because you can't convince people to work and live in a parking lot. It's ugly and it's hot. This leads us right into segment 2, concrete to greenery.
The sources describe the current site as a massive 17-hectare heat island. I think most people know that term, but let's be specific. What does 17 hectares of asphalt actually do to a neighborhood?
It acts like a giant radiator. Dark surfaces like asphalt absorb solar radiation and they re-emit it as heat.
Yeah.
In July, a parking lot like Place Versailles can be 10 to 15 degrees Celsius hotter than a nearby park.
That much? Wow.
Yeah. It cooks the neighborhood, it degrades air quality, and it drives up energy costs because everyone is just blasting their AC to fight the heat radiating off the ground.
So this project isn't just about aesthetics, it's a climate intervention.
100%.
Yeah.
The plan involves removing 4,000 surface parking spots. Just try to visualize that.
Yeah.
That is 4,000 cars worth of blacktop being ripped up.
But, and here's the logistical question, people still have cars. Especially in 2026, where do they go? You can't just wish them away, particularly in a suburb.
You bury them, the parking goes underground. Now, from a developer's perspective, that is painful. Underground parking costs exponentially more than surface parking. We're talking $40,000 to $60,000 per spot versus a few $100s for asphalt.
Right, digging a hole is expensive, painting lines is cheap.
Exactly. But that is the trade-off you make to reclaim the surface for people. Because the land above is now just too valuable to store cars on.
And what are they putting on top of that buried parking? The stats here are pretty lovely, I have to admit.
They are planting over 620 trees. And we aren't talking about a few decorative shrubs in a planter box.
Oh.
They are dedicating 10% of the total site to public parks. That's nearly 15,000 square meters of new parkland.
Divided into 3 distinct parks, right?
Correct. So just visualize the transformation. You are standing in the northeast sector. Today, you are on painted lines, smelling exhaust, dodging a shopping cart.
Mm-hmm.
In 5 years, you could be standing in a park with mature trees, benches, and, better air quality. That is the power of urban design. You are trading storage for cars for storage for people.
But to pay for that, to pay for the underground digging and the trees, you need revenue. You need density. You can't build single-family bungalows and make the math work on a $2.2 billion project.
Precisely. And this is where the concept of vertical density comes in. You have to build up to free up the ground. If you spread everyone out, you cover the grass. If you stack them, you get a park.
Let's talk about that stack then. Segment 3, the new neighbors. Because the density numbers here are what really caught my eye. We are not talking about a few new condos.
We are talking about 5,805 new housing units.
5,800. I mean, that is the size of a small town. That is a massive influx of people into one specific intersection.
It is massive. And this is where the architecture becomes so critical. If you just dropped a monolithic 50-story block in the middle of a suburb of bungalows, the locals would revolt.
Of course, it would look alien. It would block out the sun.
So the architects have adopted what they call a hills and valleys approach.
I like that description in the documents. Explain how that works in practice.
It's all about context.
Yeah.
Near the Radisson Metro Station and the highway, where you already have noise and heavy infrastructure, they are building the hills towers up to 25 stories. That's where you put your maximum density.
Okay, so the tall stuff goes where the noise is. That makes sense.
Exactly. But as you move toward the existing residential streets like Pierre-Corneille, the buildings step down. They drop to 6 to 8 stories. They call this human scale.
So if I've lived in a house on Pierre-Corneille for 30 years, I'm not suddenly going to have the Empire State Building looking into my backyard.
That's the goal. It's density where it makes sense and respect where it's needed. But beyond the shape of the buildings, we need to talk about who is living inside them.
Right.
Because often these shiny new developments are just luxury investments.
Luxury rentals starting at $2,500 for a studio. Is that what's happening here? Because if you displace the current demographic, you aren't really building a community, you're just gentrifying it.
And the source material suggests a concerted effort to avoid that. And this is a key part of the deal with the city. They're emphasizing social mixity. They are adhering to the recommendations from the OCPM, that's the Public Consultation Office in Montreal.
What are the hard numbers on that?
They are planning approximately 979 social housing units.
979. So that's nearly 20% of the total.
It is a significant chunk. It ensures that the neighborhood doesn't become this monoculture of wealth. It means the people working in the retail shops or the hotel can actually afford to live in the community they serve.
That's a huge point.
But there's another layer of mixity that I think is even more important for the long-term vibe of the place.
Okay.
When you add 5,800 households, you are not just adding adults, you are adding children.
And usually in these developments, schools are an afterthought. You see these pop-up condos and then realize 3 years later, oh wait, the local school is at 150% capacity.
Exactly. But here, the plan includes the construction of a new elementary school directly on site.
That is a game changer for the definition of neighborhood.
It really is. A school changes the social fabric. It creates a routine. Parents meet at drop-off. Kids play in those new parks after school. It turns a development into a community.
It anchors families there for the long term.
Exactly. Rather than just transient young professionals who move out when they have kids.
So we have the housing, the parks, the school, the jobs. Now we have to talk about connectivity. How do people get around? We mentioned burying the cars, but the vibe I'm getting from the documents is that the developers are kind of hoping the cars stay buried.
That is the whole strategy. It's called TOD, Transit-Oriented Development.
TOD, it sounds like a buzzword, but it's basically the holy grail of modern planning, right?
It is. And the strategy here is dictated entirely by the location. The site is strategically located right across from the Radisson Metro Station. That is the ultimate asset.
It's the spine of the whole project.
Correct. The goal is sustainable mobility. The design explicitly prioritizes active transport, new bike paths, secure pedestrian links that lead directly to the metro.
It's such a sharp contrast to the 1963 design. In 1963, the pedestrian link was basically running across the parking lot and hoping a station wagon didn't hit you.
Precisely. The original design was built for the car. The assumption was that every single person arriving at Place Versailles would arrive in a private vehicle. This new design flips that hierarchy.
So the car becomes a guest, not the host.
That's a great way to put it. It assumes a huge chunk of people will walk to the metro to get downtown, bike to the local office, or walk their kids to that on-site school.
But there's always a but with a project of this size.
Yeah.
You can't drop a mini city into an established neighborhood without friction. We touched on the construction noise, but looking at the consultation reports, there are other concerns. Real concerns.
Of course. And the sources acknowledge this pretty candidly. Not everyone is thrilled. The two big friction points are traffic and shadows.
The classics.
The classics. Even with a TOD strategy, 5,800 new units will bring more cars. That's just physics. Not everyone takes the metro. People are worried about congestion in an area that already gets busy around the highway ramps.
And honestly, I get that. If my commute suddenly takes 20 minutes longer because of a new development, I'm not going to be happy about the nice new trees.
No, you won't.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge the city has to manage with signal timing and road infrastructure. Then there are the shadows.
That's about those 25-story towers, I'm guessing.
Yes. Even with the step-down approach we discussed, people worry about losing sunlight. It's an emotional thing. If you're used to seeing open sky over the mall and suddenly there's a silhouette of a tower, it changes how you feel about your home.
It can feel oppressive.
It can.
Is the developer listening, or are they just steamrolling through because they have the budget?
The notes indicate they have made adjustments. They reduced building heights along the periphery, specifically to address those shadow studies. It shows that urban planning is a negotiation. You have the regional need. We need housing, we need density clashing with the local desire for stability and quiet.
It's a delicate dance. You can't solve the housing crisis without annoying someone.
True. But there's also a nostalgia aspect we shouldn't discount. Place Versailles is iconic. People had their first dates there. They bought their wedding outfits there.
That's a really good point.
Seeing it change, seeing it get densified can feel like losing a piece of personal history.
We focus on the bricks and mortar, but malls are weirdly emotional places for people. They were the background of our lives.
They were the town squares of the late 20th century. Losing that, or seeing it morph into something unrecognizable, is jarring.
So stepping back and looking at the whole picture,
Well.
from the 1963 opening day photos to these 2051 projections, what are we actually witnessing here?
We're witnessing the maturation of the suburbs. We've gone from segregating everything, here's where you shop, here's where you sleep, here's where you work, to smashing it all back together into one ecosystem.
Resiliency through diversity.
Exactly. If you have a neighborhood that is just retail, and retail dies, the neighborhood dies. If you have one that's just office towers, and everyone starts working from home, it becomes a ghost town.
Right.
But if you mix it, housing, school, retail, office, parks, you create something that can survive the changes of the next century.
It's basically hedging your bets on how humans will live.
That's a great way to put it.
So to recap for you listening, we're watching the start of a $2.2 billion experiment. A parking lot becomes a neighborhood. A heat island becomes a park. and a mall becomes a city.
All connected to the metro. It's a glimpse of what the future of North American living might look like.
It really challenges the old American dream narrative, doesn't it? We grew up thinking the dream was a lawn, a driveway, a fence. But if projects like Place Versailles are the future, the new dream is vertical, walkable, and communal.
And perhaps a little bit greener.
I want to leave you with a thought to mull over today. If the suburbs are transforming into these dense mini-cities, does that change what home feels like to you? Is home your castle with a moat of grass, or is home being part of a busy, messy, vibrant hive?
That is the question of the century.
As always, thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll be watching this construction site closely for the next 25 years.
We certainly will.
See you next time.